We are watching President Trump there meeting with the president of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. President Trump started things off by touting their relationship and saying he thinks they'll accomplish a trade deal. Right now, the Philippines faces a 20% tariff starting August 1st. President Trump also says he was invited to China by President Xi, and he will likely go in the not too distant future. The president also commented on the DOJ meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell, called for Fed Chair Jerome Powell to lower interest rates, and is calling for former President Obama to be prosecuted. For more, let's bring in Karen Travers at the White House. Karen, what stands out to you here?
Well, I think a lot of those comments the president was making about first the deputy attorney general going down there and having that planned meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell. The president said he doesn't know anything about it, but he said it sounds appropriate to him and that he had no concerns about it. He said he didn't know that they were going to do it, indicating that he had not been briefed before the Justice Department made that announcement. He also made some very wild accusations about the former president, Barack Obama, accusing him of treason related to the Russia investigation. Again, some very wild accusations there that our colleagues can help fact check on that, of course. But the president also was taking some questions on trade issues and the specific relationship between the United States and the Philippines, and did say that he wanted to try to strike a trade deal, which is notable, Diane, because the president has been indicating for weeks that once he had sent these letters out to countries, that was going to be the deal. The Philippines got one. They were told their tariff rate on August 1st would be 20%, but now he's indicating there potentially could be some room for negotiations. He really also seemed very eager to tout the close ties between the two countries and sort of lure the Philippines away from a close relationship with China, even as he mentioned, as you said, that he could potentially visit there because he was extended that invitation from China's President Xi a couple months ago.
And I want to bring in ABC News Justice Department reporter Alex Mallon, too. Alex, the federal judge overseeing the Justice Department's request to unseal grand jury records from Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal case says he plans to rule expeditiously. How significant is that?
Yeah, so I mean, this is just with respect to Ghislaine Maxwell's case. The Justice Department moved last Friday in both Jeffrey Epstein's case, Ghislaine Maxwell, and then down in Florida, where they previously had a grand jury investigation into Jeffrey Epstein dating back to the 2000s. And they are basically seeking to make public grand jury testimony. That is something that the department rarely, if ever, does. And it usually sets forth kind of an exhaustive inquiry by the judge who, needs an explanation. And this judge in the Southern District of New York is now asking the department to give further briefing because he says their initial motion did not really outline in proper terms the extraordinary nature of this request. And he's asking them until, I think, July 25th to come back to him with a renewed motion, outlining kind of what circuit precedent says it needs to be their justification for making these types of documents, which are ordinarily very secret, to the public. And he's also giving the chance for both Ghislaine Maxwell, her counsel, and victims that were identified in the case to make their case, why or why should not this testimony be made public. They're giving them until August 5th to weigh in on that, Diane.
And I want to bring in Jay O'Brien, who's on Capitol Hill. Jay, what are you hearing from lawmakers on this and some of the other things we just heard from the president?
Yeah, look, this Jeffrey Epstein issue is not going away on Capitol Hill. That's the main takeaway I've gotten from my conversations with congressional Republicans on this. As we just saw not long ago, just about an hour ago this morning, a subcommittee of the House Oversight Committee voted to subpoena Ghislaine Maxwell. Before that panel, it was an effort led by Tim Burchett, Republican of Tennessee, and then James Comer, the chair of the Oversight Committee, who would really be in charge of whether or not this motion from this subcommittee would be acted on, said through a spokesperson that the committee will work to subpoena Maxwell as expeditiously as possible, are the words that they used. Now, obviously, she's in federal custody, so they have to work with the Department of Justice and the Bureau of Prisons in order to make this happen. And we really don't know what, quote unquote, expeditiously means in the eyes of this committee, but there is at least some formal effort. James Comer, chair of the Oversight Committee, a powerful committee up here on Capitol Hill, there is at least some effort to bring Ghislaine Maxwell before that panel. And it stands really in contrast with what we've heard repeatedly out of the White House and out of the president telling congressional Republicans to move on here. And then there's another effort from Thomas Massie, who's long been a thorn in the administration side on a number of issues, to join with Democrat Ro Khanna and get about a handful of Republicans, which he says he has, and compel a vote on the House floor to call for a full release of all Epstein records. I just want to give you a little bit of what Massie told me earlier, because I asked him, is the president president, by telegraphing to Republicans he wants them to move on, is the president standing in the way of something his base truly wants? Here's what Massey said.
Do you think the president's at risk of losing his base over this issue?
Well, you don't lose your base over one single thing, but he's eroding his base. More importantly, if we don't take the right side of this issue, it's going to cost us votes in the midterms. People are becoming despondent, they're apathetic. Why would they go vote if they gave us the House, the Senate, and the White House, and the transparency and justice they were promised doesn't happen?
So eroding is the word he used. Meantime, Speaker Mike Johnson weighed in on Massey and accused Massey of playing political games with this, saying he's trying to force the administration to do something that they've already signaled they want to do, which is provide transparency on this Epstein case. All of it to say this Jeffrey Epstein saga, despite the president's best wishes, is not going away, Diane.
It sure seems that way. And Alex, the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, is pushing allegations that during the Obama administration, high-ranking intelligence officials participated in a, quote, treasonous conspiracy in their assessments of Russian interference during the 2016 election season. What are you hearing about the president's call now that the DOJ should be prosecuting the former president?
Yeah, I mean, I think we heard it in the most explicit terms yet from the president in the Oval Office. They're saying next to a foreign leader, saying that former President Obama is, quote, guilty, and that he is guilty of treason. And it's worth noting, Diane, that treason is a crime that is punishable in this country by death. So it's a very dire and serious allegation, and it was something that was leveled by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard when she released these documents last week that are basically a series of emails, briefing materials that were previously classified from during the Obama administration, which do not at all say what she has alleged that they say. I mean, at least in terms of the questions we've been asking them, we are trying to figure out where these allegations are coming from. She seems to be taking a leap based on the idea that the intelligence community during the 2016 election was saying over and over again that they had no evidence that Russia was hacking the vote. That is wildly different than the determinations which were made by both Special Counsel Robert Mueller and congressional investigators, including the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence led by now, at the time, Secretary of State Rep. Marco Rubio, who determined that Russia was and did engage in an extensive effort during the 2016 election to influence the election on behalf of then candidate Donald Trump. Those are findings that are not in dispute by any of these materials that were released by DNI Gabbard. They do not undercut that at all. There's a difference between the idea of hacking the vote itself and influencing the election. So these are serious allegations not backed by any of what DNI Gabbard or President Trump said in the Oval Office there.
All right, Karen Travers, Jay O'Brien, Alex Mallon, thank you all.